Hello, everybody. It's the Real Senior Stoner back at you for your Dablamp Diamond Dab of the Day. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me. As always, since I know you're going to enjoy today's video, hit the subscribe button, send a like, and I reply to all the comments. Let's get started with today's topic. Many of you know that I spent my adult life as a sales executive. Well, I spent my young adult life as a salesperson, pounding the pavement. My job was to convince everybody, whenever I was trying to sell them, was something they needed. So, the topic of the day is, how do we convince anyone of anything? Let's get started. Well, developing powers of persuasion is going to help you get ahead in business, in personal life, in everything, every facet of your life. Whether you want to convince a client to make a big purchase or just to tell your parents to let you stay out later at night. Learning to construct arguments and style those arguments and understand the person you're arguing with. Once you do all those things really well, you can convince anyone of anything. Well, making good arguments is a process. You've got to define the terms of the discussion. For certain arguments, you may need to know more than just facts. So you don't want to waste time about whether or not the Eiffel Tower is pretty if you're trying to establish that it's iconic. Define your terms. Is it a moral issue? An aesthetic issue? An issue of rights and freedom? Is it an issue of math? So it's very important that you set the criteria, if you will, that you're going to use in your discussion. You got to develop your reasoning, so to speak, because making a good argument is like building a table. You want the main point to be held up by supporting reasoning, like a table is held up by its legs. If you don't have that supporting reasoning and evidence, your table is just a piece of wood. So just like an essay that we craft as a thesis statement, you need to define and articulate the main point you're trying to make and assemble supporting evidence that backs it up. So it's really important that you come up with reasons to make your point stronger. We back up our reasoning with vivid examples and evidence. We need to use memorable and striking details that will truly illustrate our points for us and the other person we're talking to. If you want to convince someone about music, for example, specific music, it'd be tough if you can't find music to listen to while you're having that discussion. So do your homework, is what I'm saying. Make sure you understand your own viewpoint really clearly, whether it's a subjective issue or whether you're trying to convince something very specific about a moral issue. Find the facts first. F, the three F's, without making any assumptions about what the other person's point of view is going to be. It's very important that you also know your competition in the situation, not just your facts. In convincing someone of something else that you want them to do, you've got to give an inch to gain a mile. Accepting one lesser point from the other person and showing that you can change your mind and that you have mutual agreements will open up the other person to your side of thinking. So you need to be willing to concede certain points in the discussion to win the overall argument. There's a big difference, in fact, between discussions and arguments. An argument has escalated past rationality and is driven by ego. But once you're talking about a discussion, you can still have facts and specifics in it. You've also got to remember to style your argument, I call it. Be as confident as you are assertive. People are drawn to confidence, and there's nothing you can do to bolster your point of view more than presenting it with conviction and the presumption of proof, no matter what you're trying to prove. If the presenter you believes it, guess what? You'll help your cause. Being assertive, though, doesn't mean being unwavering or aggressive. Let yourself be confident in your side of the argument, but open to alternatives. You want to cast yourself as an expert in the subject by using great examples of solid reasoning and make it very easy for the other person to believe you. To convince someone that your perspective is valid, you're going to have to first make it seem as if you know what they're talking about as well as what you're talking about when it comes to the topic. It's critically important to make it personal, because while anecdotal evidence can be considered appealing to someone's sense of empathy is by relating the topic to them. It doesn't necessarily prove what you're saying, but it might be enough to be convincing. If you want to convince someone of something, learn stories about what you're talking about with critical examples. And remember, in your discussion, as we go through these different challenges, responses, make sure you stay calm. Raving like a lunatic is a poor way to convince anyone that you're right. Being confident in the facts that you're presenting, in the evidence that you're using to support your claims, and in the perspective you're bringing to the table, that's what's going to make it easy for you to get other people convinced of your points. Critical importance is to understand your opponent. God gave us two of these and one of these for a reason. Shut up and listen. The person who talks the most does
I'm
not.
not sure I understand.
The person who talks the most does not win an argument or convince anyone of everything, of anything for that matter. Learning to listen courteously is the most underutilized way of building an argument. While it may not seem like an active way to be convincing, taking the time to learn someone else's point of view is going to allow you to convince them of the alternatives. We need to learn to recognize the other person's goals, their beliefs, and their motivations so that we can guide them to our point of view. It's about engaging that person politely, maintaining eye contact, using an even tone of voice, and remaining calm through the entire discussion, no matter what. Asking questions and practicing active listening while the other person is talking, never interrupting them in the middle of a sentence, and always being courteous. These are establishing mutual respect. That's all it is. You're never going to convince anybody of anything if they believe you don't respect them. So show the other person you respect them and be good enough to gain their respect. And then you can get them to your side of the discussion. We need to identify the other person's objections and motivations. You see, if you know what another person wants, you're more than likely going to be able to give it to them. When you've identified the motivations behind that person's point of view, rephrase your beliefs in a way that the other person is better able to understand. You see, it's all about learning the different language that the other person speaks and being able to deliver information back to them so that they can hear it. That's the key. Ask questions of the opponent in the discussion to get them to see the gaps in their thinking that you're noticing. Gain the person's trust. It's not about arguing. It's about emphasizing and relating to that person's point of view, conceding certain points where necessary, but keeping your eye on changing their mind. If we work them into a corner of logic they can't escape from, guess what you've done? You've convinced them. And they'll have accepted that it's okay to agree with you and change their mind. But only if you're a courteous conversationalist. Anyone can convince anybody of anything. Now, you do remember that old saying that you can fool a person sometime, but you can't fool them every time. Something like that is how it goes. It's the same thing with this. You've got to be honest with people and forthright. You've got to be direct and to the point. And you've got to let the person know who you're talking to that you understand where they're coming from. You can't just pound, here's what I think. Here's what I think. Here's what I think you should do. Here's what I think you should do. Nah. Oh, that's a great point you've made. That's a wonderful point. Matter of fact, a lot of other people felt the same way. What we found, boom, boom, boom. You're going to use basic human contact skills in the convincing of anything to anyone. This has been the Real Senior Stoner. I appreciate everybody being here today for our dab of the day with our Dablamp. We're getting the dab train rolling. You know what to do if you enjoy the video. Hit that subscribe button, send a like, and a reply to all the comments. The dab train is almost ready to roll. Cheers, have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining me, the Real Senior Stoner. Have a great one, everybody. Ooh, ooh. Wow. The Dablamp. Have a great one, everyone. Cheers.